Hello, everyone. I am Francesco Corti, Product Evangelist for Alfresco, and today we are here for a new webinar on and Tech Talk Live. So, webinar entirely dedicated on technical content related to Alfresco technology. Today it's a new webinar entirely dedicated on ADF experience, so ADF development. I will introduce you very soon our guest, a special guest, and the topic of today. But before, let me share with you the next event, some highlights about what is going to happen in the near future. First of all, I would like to remind you at the end of April, probably the 27th, it's a Friday, even if it should be confirmed soon. We will have another webinar, an office hour dedicated to meet someone on the organization. It's a friendly discussion with someone of the Alfresco organization to discuss about new stuff. We are planning to do something about process and the new activity stuff, but it will be confirmed soon. Another thing that I would like to submit to your attention is another exciting event, local event, in particular a meetup that will happen the 21st of April in India. I cannot really pronounce the name of the city, and I apologize for that, but it's a really nice event for all the Indian friends, Alfresco friends, because Concentric is going to organize an Alfresco meetup, and we are very happy because in the first few hours, receive dozens of interest to this meetup. So if you are in India, in that area of Concentric, please join us. It will be a nice event. But I don't want to waste other time, and I would like to introduce you Kasper. Kasper, I apologize, but I cannot really pronounce your surname. How can I pronounce your surname?
Reijnders.
Okay. I promise you that next time I will train on that. And thank you, Kasper, for being here. Kasper, it's a former front-end developer. Now he's working on ADF stuff. So we are very happy. He works for Incentro, one Alfresco partner. He's going to show us a really exciting integration between ADF and AOS. But I don't want to steal time, and I will leave the mic to Kasper and to show interesting stuff. Kasper, the microphone to you.
Thank you. I will put up the presentation.
Yes, I can see your screen.
So thanks for having me. Today we'll talk about the action management tool that we built for one of our clients. And it contains a lot of integration with Alfresco and ADF. But first, let me tell something about myself. I'm Kasper. I'm 30 years old. I live in the Netherlands. And I'm a front-end developer now working for the Alfresco team of Incentro. And therefore, I've got a lot of experience with Angular, which makes a lot of sense with ADF. So let's focus on the case first. Action management. I'm first going to show you some of the details of the case, because I think you need to know something before we can dive into some technical details. And for this case, we have had a specific set of roles that are actually in need. So we have some teachers, we have students, we have somebody who's a test expert, and we have a test desk. And the test desk is the desk that actually makes sure that the students can participate in the tests. The life of a test has several phases that it goes through. First, we have a construction phase, where the teachers and the test expert will create a test. They will make sure that everything is correct, and they will review it and make sure that the students have a perfect test. And once they are certain that a test is ready, the test will go to the test phase. In the test phase, students will take the test, and once they're done, they will get to an evaluation test phase. In this phase, the test will get evaluated, people can have remarks, people get their actual mark, and once that's done, it goes archived. So step A, we first need to create a test file. The test expert is basically some kind of site admin in Alfresco world. But for the clients, they don't know the name of site manager, they just call it test expert. And this guy is going to create a test. He assigns a teacher for creating the test and a teacher for reviewing the test, maybe 2 teachers for reviewing. Gives it a name and all that kind of information. We'll see later on. And they can create the test. Once they are done, the test manager is going to update the phase, and the test desk will print, distribute, and take the exam with students. Then once that's done, the phase will be updated again, and there will be an evaluation where everybody can have their remarks, where everybody gets their marks, and where everybody discusses how the test went. In the end, you always want to archive, so also tests we are going to archive. Why is this important? It's important because of the roles. Because for every different phase in our application, we have got different roles per user group. I did mention students, but I now grade them out because they don't have a role within Alfresco. They only take the test in the end. So we have the site manager or test expert, which is on the right, and he has admin rights on everything within their context. We also have teachers that actually only have create rights in the construction phase and in the evaluation phase, because once the test has been created, they are not allowed to change it because they would get real strange results. And the test desk is the group that actually only prints the test, so they only need access to tests that are in the test phase. With that in mind, let's just skip the functional things. Let's go on to the technical stuff. We've used Alfresco platform for rights and roles, also for the configuration and for the functional and technical maintenance. They do that via share. We didn't create an extensive interface via ADF. We just created an interface that is user-centered for the teachers and the test experts and test desk, so that they can easily access the tests themselves. So this is a task-driven content application that really tries to be tiny. And it has a real clean interface. So several topics that were actually really needed for the client was that they wanted to share files and folders. They also wanted to share specific test files, and they didn't just want to share it in the Alfresco way, like I want to assign you to this. They just want to send somebody an email with a link in it. So we needed to think, how can we do that? We also wanted a really easy overview of what are the tests that are in which phase and that you have rights for. And they wanted to search. They wanted to be able to open a file in Office and edit it. And they also had, we have like 10, 15 different academies, and they all have their own specific needs. How can we work with that? And probably not all teachers have the rights for each academy. So what we did was basically every academy has been turned into a site, and we just add the teachers to the site. So we didn't have to think about the rights anymore because that was already covered by Alfresco. So we want to be able to share some parts of the application. So let's say if you have a specific file and I want to give that file to you, and I want to give you the link, then the link has to be unique. So we have created two base URLs in the application, because the only way we can do that is via routing. And the two paths that we created are files and dashboard. On dashboard, of course, we will have an overview of what is really relevant for you. And in files, you have just a collection of files. But we need to know the specific way which folder are you going to show. So we added a folder ID to the URI so that you can actually go into a folder. Once we open a file, we also want to be able to just share the preview of the file. So we had a preview and a file ID. And in this case, if you share a file alone, then you can easily go back to the folder and so forth. We don't have to really rethink about that anymore. So this is for us one of the things that was really handy in creating URL structures. So you do have two node IDs in the URL this way, but you always can go back from the file to the folder structure and the other way around. The dashboard, on the other hand, had like 4 different entrances. So we have per phase, we have a different view. So we actually would like to be able to bookmark that one. So we added a tab ID and a tab name. The tab name is really interesting here because for clients it's really useful, but the application itself doesn't do anything with it. We just have it there so that anyone can actually read what's there, because tab ID is just a number. And if you go to this page, tab 5, no one's going to know what that actually means. So now we have this page, tab 5, construction phase. And everybody understands what it is. For the test desk, we also needed to be able to switch between academies sites. So we also added a site ID, which we call Academy ID, because everything is about academies, so that we can actually switch between the academy and just can bookmark it or send somebody a mail with, have a look at this one. Another advantage of that is that once you now go and click through the folder structure, you will actually be able to see that the URL changes. So in the URL bar, you will now see that the node reference has been changed every time. And also when you click on the back and forward buttons inside your browser, you will be able to just navigate through your browser history. At first we didn't have that, but then we figured that the user is actually going to do that whether or not you have this functionality in your code. They just said, yeah, I want to go back and forth. Well, if you keep a structure like this, so that every time once you navigate, that your URL gets updated, then they can actually go back and forth. I will show you in a minute what we did to do that. So once the routing is set, we can actually share things. So I've got an example of the sharing. We can share a file, and we also implemented a small send an email, which basically is a mail to. Once you've configured your mail application correctly, then it will open, which I didn't. And we have specific parts where you can share. So we have a right click on the file, or on the left, we can just open it, share the entire file itself. And also from within the document. So what does this look like in code? We probably all know something about the routing in Angular, because if you create the basic ADF application, there is some routing in it already. And what we did, we extended it. So the paths that were just in the previous slide are all in the routing module. So here we have the files folder ID and preview, and the preview with a file ID. As you can see, the preview without file ID is actually redirecting to the files component instead of the preview component. And that is because we cannot show a preview if we do not have a file. Both are only with content services, so they only activate the outguard ECN. And within the ng module, we just include our routes. We also have used the use hash property, which is, if you by accident know how Angular's 1 point something works, there was the default way of getting URLs work. And that actually means that there is a hashtag just before the routing. We also implemented that because if you implement this, it is easier to configure routing on the server, because you do not have to do anything actually. If you don't have a use hash, then you have to configure the server to make sure that all paths redirect to the index.html. So we just keep this as a way of going. It's easier for us. Also, the application structure. We have the app component, which contains toolbar component, which is a mat toolbar. And what I like about this, that you can easily generate this by installing Augury, which is a Chrome plugin for the developer tools. And you can just have a look at all components that are used within your application. Does not really work smooth with Angular 5 point anything yet, but at least a little bit of information is sometimes handy. So what we see here, we have a router outlet, which is the Angular component, and we have a mat toolbar, mat drawer, which all are material components. And of course, we have ADF components. And finally, we've created some components ourselves. We created the app component, app documents, and a favorite component. So favorite component is not really custom, because the favorite component is just a button that actually says to the backend, I want this to be added to the favorites. Can you do that for me? And the backend says, yes, of course, why not? App documents is a wrapper around the document list, because we found using a document list is very handy, but there's also some kind of things that we didn't really like about how it works. For example, if you have a document list, it expects either a folder ID or a node ID, or a folder node. And if you give it a folder ID, then it does everything automatically for you, which of course is very handy if you just want to present some files on the screen. But most of the time you actually want to have some control over what you're going to show to the user. So what we did, we added, instead of the node ID, we added the folder node. And also, we actually captured the preview and the folder change events. I will go into the folder node in a bit. The preview and navigate and the preview and folder change event are captured so that we can actually do a navigation based on whatever you click on. So if you click on a link that opens a folder, then you get navigated to a new folder. But if you open a file that actually has preview, then you will open a file. What also is interesting is here that you can see relative to this route. So we don't have to know the entire route that we are currently at. // means back one, and if we just have in mind the way how our route was looking, it was files/node ID. So what basically happens here is that we remove the node ID and replace it with a new one. So by using this relative to, we do not have to know that the first part was named files. So our sequence is as follows. The first thing that actually happens is that the router gets triggered and says to the files component, hey, it's your turn. Then the files component says to the router, okay, but what is the ID? And the files component gets back from the router the folder ID and then goes to the API service to get any information about the folder, maybe children. And our files component then gives these nodes and these children back to the documents view and document list, and also breadcrumb and upload area, all ADF components, to be filled with this data. If we do it this way, we can easily be sure that the things that are shown are the things that we actually want to be shown. We also have influence on whether or not things change. And we also have influence on what the actual actions are going to be that you can do with it. And as said before, if you click anything, then we do a navigate to, and the entire story starts over. So if you navigate to a deeper folder, then we go back to the your turn. And if we navigate to a preview, then the router will not call the files component, but it will call the preview component. So that's basic about how do we browse through files, what can we see. But during the implementation of this, we also got some different challenges that we would like to show and would like to talk about how we solved them. So one of the challenges was that in parts of the screen, we were wanting to have different columns in the document list. This is a thing that I talked to with some of the ADF guys, and at this moment, it's really hard to do this. But there is a simple trick, because I figured that every data column that you put in the list can be completed with a class, which is a plain CSS class, and it will repeat it throughout the entire table. So what we just do, we added a class hide in test file, or we add a ng class so that it only shows up whether or not on a specific condition. In this case, we already knew where we wanted to hide this, and we put on a higher level class to make sure that this is the actual screen. So we added some styling to be able to display none on the hide in test file. Be aware that this is SCSS styling, so that nesting is possible. One interesting thing here is the ng deep, which is a Angular thing to be able to go deeper into your components, because by default Angular actually extends every class that you have with a specific attribute to make sure that you cannot have any style bleeding between components. But in this case, we actually want style bleeding. Therefore, we do ng deep to go deeper into the component and access its childs. Also, the path here is really specific, and that is because we have the CSS to be really more specific than the styling that was already there. So this is the result. Indeed, this is exactly the same document list, and also without any page refreshes, this happens. When I open the functional programmeren thing on the top screen, then you'll get the screen on the bottom. And on the top one, you'll see a face and a constructor. And in the bottom one, you'll actually see a document status and a version. You can probably imagine that the customer was really happy with this, because at first they had all columns in every screen, and now they just have the columns that they actually need. One of the other things that we wanted to be done was that we can actually open a document in Office, because out of the box, ADF is not yet supporting opening files in Office, but Alfresco is already for years. So what we did, we created a module which is freely available on Git on npm that actually opens a file for you based on the node ID. So we just wanted to be able to go to a file, right-click, and open in Office. As I said, we created a small module for this, and once we've installed it, I can just include it in the ng module, of course, and also import it within my component in my component. And once we click a file, we do the open in Office event. And the Office Action Service has a edit online, which is not really online, but it actually starts Office for you based on an entry and the ECM host. The reason for this is that the plugin that we created is not aware of anything that is ADF or Alfresco. It's just a really tiny Angular module that actually does nothing more than just combining the correct URL for you and making sure that you can just open a file and just edit it. So the strength of this module now is that it's really, really tiny. So what happens? We just click on the Open with Office, and you get a message. Do you want to open it in Office? Yes, I do want. I can just wait one back. Just for example, you can see that the version numbers are really like 1.1, 1.0. We open it. You just edit the file. You save it and go back. And when you reload the page, you'll see that the file has actually been changed. One of the things that we did not yet solve was that we actually would like the application to do some kind of refresh until you, on the moment that you get focused back on the screen. So for example, if we just open Office, then you switch to Office, and once you switch back to the application, then we would like to make sure that we actually know whether or not you have updated the file. For as far as I know, that's not yet possible, but if somebody knows how to do that, please let me know. Unfortunately, on my computer, I do not have any Office, so and I'm running Linux instead of Windows or Mac, so I'm getting a message. This is not available for you. But at least you know that it is there, but yeah, it doesn't work for you. Another one of the challenges that we have was the screen is completely cluttered with buttons and all that kind of things that are mainly not really needed for anyone. So we have the matrix, the permission matrix that I showed in the beginning, and teachers only have create rights in 2 out of the 4 phases, and the test desk even has only read rights in 1 of the phases, and the rest he doesn't have any rights at all. So we do not want the user to have the create new folder button if there's no create functionality. We also do not want to have edit functionality when there is no edit or create functionality. So I do know that there's still development going on this permissions thing, but for us, we kind of solved this with a very small functionality. So in this case, we have a academy that is called AMA, and on the right we have a create folder button, which is good because I'm an administrator, so I am able to create a new folder here. But if I'm going to be a constructor, then I actually am not allowed to create a folder. So this is what we want to achieve, and this is how we did it. So we created a is test file, is toetsdossier check that runs every time the page gets loaded or the document list gets loaded, and we check whether or not you have permission. So based on your current entry and the operation that you want to have, we check whether or not you have it in the allowable operations. So we can do that because we created the files layer before our document list. Therefore, we actually request all files, all folders with all these properties that I just put on the screen. So we include the path, we include the properties, and we include the allowable operations. For this application, it was pretty simple because we either had create or nothing. So if you do not have create, then you are not allowed to do specific things. And for the context menu, it works almost the same way. Only in that case, we do not check for create, but we check for delete. Why? Because most of the functions in there are only allowed by the site admin, and he is the only one that actually has delete functionality. So rename and not rename, but change settings and that kind of information, that's all in the delete operation.
It's time for question, probably, Kasper.
Yes.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much. Really interesting, and we can see it also from the comments also of the DF team in YouTube. I would like to share with all of you that you can ask questions to Kasper or me, of course, using the chat in the YouTube channel. There is a live chat that you can use, and some comments are already there. But you can also use the RC channel, the Alfresco RC channel that you can find at chat.alfresco.com. There you can log in also as a guest and start raising your questions. back to the content or the presentation. Kasper, thank you very much. I think that it's a great example of what we usually say as Alfresco, that ADF starts to has a lot of value when you build some verticals and custom application on top of content services, process services, of governance services, of course. And I think this is exactly the case. One question is, first of all, we have a feedback from the YouTube chat for you, Kasper. Not a question, but a compliment to Kasper. Well done. So this is a feedback, it's a positive feedback, so we can share. Can you talk a little bit about which version of ADF you used when you started? If you had also to change version and upgrade. So can you briefly talk a little bit about the story of this project?
Yeah, we started with Alfresco ADF 1.89, something like that, and then we got the question from our client to add some new features, and we said, okay, we do want to create your new features, but we also would like to upgrade. And we were having two and a half weeks, and we figured that was actually easier to just rebuild this entire thing in ADF 2.2 than 2.1 at that time, than being able to fix this in the 1.9 version. Also because of the setup of the application, it was one of the first things that we did. So we rebuilt it in 2.1, and after a few days 2.2 was released, so we upgraded to 2.2, and that was really easy actually. So yeah, it was basically just changing some settings and done.
And so first of all, I would like to underline that we didn't ask you to talk as mandatory very well about this path, but again, I would like to raise to you some question about the real challenges and which has been your experience in developing an ADF, because probably you are aware, and probably lots of people that is here in this webinar is aware, that there is a discussion in the ecosystem about the development on ADF. Someone has some really positive experience. Someone else would like to improve some aspects and some topics. So I would like to understand more about your experience and the experience in this project. So you were saying that you upgrade the ADF version twice. Can you talk a little bit about the effort? So in your experience, so what has been the path that you have done, and which is your suggestion for an upgrading the solution, so a project built on one to another version?
Yeah, the experience I have thus far is that from 2.0 to 2.1 or 2.2 is actually really well doable. It's really easy. Just follow the steps, or the easiest way that I think of is just create an empty project with 2.1 and then see what's the difference between the empty project of 2.0, because then you see the actual difference. But that was basically like half an hour work, maybe, more or less. But from 1.9 to 2.0, that was really hard. So that's why we also chose not to upgrade, but just to start over. In 1.9, there was still a specific way of thinking that has been changed a little bit. And I think the product is becoming more mature with the newer versions, and also, yeah, so basically it's easier to not Yeah, you really have to think, do I need to upgrade or do I need to start with a new when there's new version? Because if you have a really old version, then it might also have been that the way you are now programming within your team is changed a lot. And what I now see is that most applications that we actually build are not really big, because it's really task driven, most of them. So it's must not be that difficult to redo the project, and most of the time you can just copy a lot. But yeah, at first I would say if you have a 2 point something version, then upgrading is really easy. But if you have 1 point something version, then yeah, then you have to think twice.
I was waiting for you to finish your thought around that, because in the meantime, some confirmation of your experience are coming also in the RC channel. So where some people is sharing that upgrading from 1.x to 2.x, it's really it's quite hard and heavy to do. On the other side, Eugenio from the ADF team is suggesting also to don't forget to upgrade to the 2.3, the newest and the latest version, because that will come soon, because lots of improvement about the performance. Of course, I assume that the customer rules, as you were discussing, and in the meantime, positive feedback. You are collecting positive feedbacks from the YouTube chat. So just to share with you something that probably you are interested to know. One question is about the effort. So can you tell a little bit how much effort did you experience to complete this project? And the second question is a confirmation if this application is in production, and so if there is a customer that is using this application, and if you can talk if it is in production, because I don't know honestly how many users are using that, or which is the usage of that application.
Yeah, we're currently doing an acceptance test of this project, so they're not they are in a production environment, but they're still testing. And the idea is that now one of the academies is actually going to use it for the last quarter of the year, and from on next year all academies will use it. So there will be a few thousand of teachers that are actually going to use the application. Somewhere around 6,000 I heard, but I'm not really sure about the amount.
Cool. 6,000, it's a big number. And what about the effort, roughly, of course? So I mean, can you talk a little bit how many how many days, hours, weeks, months, years, many years did you need, or did your team need? I mean, it's something like close to the years, it's something like close to the months, to the weeks. Which is your experience in that? Because just to give you a call, or probably also other users are interested, there is also a discussion around the effort on developing something with ADF. Of course, during some presentation we have seen you can run your application in minutes. This is true, of course, but which is your experience? And I could be really interested to understand a real world scenario.
Yeah, so we of course had a version 1 point something running previously, but I think if we had to we had to rethink about a lot of things before we upgraded, because also the navigation and all that kind of things, we had new ideas about how we do that, routing. So I think we did some 2.5 weeks. Now let's say 3 weeks with 2 people. So we're just with 2. We're not just with 2, but we're only 2 that actually developed this project now.
I think it's really good. They are really good numbers, but this is my opinion, of course. And so first of all, thank you for sharing, and that's all. Okay. Just an information to all the people. If you have questions, please. We are very close to the end of the presentation, of course, because we are waiting for more questions. So if you want to ask to Kasper about his experience, don't stop raising question in the YouTube chat and or in the RC channel. We will wait few minutes more if a new question will not come. In the meantime, I would like to thank Sujay that remind me that the city where the meetup will happen the 21st of April is Ahmedabad. I hope I pronounce it correctly. Again, it's in India. It will be led by Concentric. The registration are already open in the meetup website, so don't forget to register there and attend this new meetup. Another information, if you are interested to host a meetup in your city, please contact me or Kristen Castaldo. We are very happy to support you officially as Alfresco, and could be an interesting opportunity for you. In the meantime, Alexandre from in the YouTube chat is asking for a question. How much skilled in Angular was the team prior to starting the project? So can you talk a little bit more about the required skill to correctly drive this project to the success?
So we had myself I'm pretty skilled Angular developer already. So, and we also had one, the other one was not so skilled in Angular yet. So they had to learn it. So one experienced and one less experienced. I'm not so experienced for this, but I think now also experienced.
Of course, yes. Another question is what has been your experience with SSL or proxy in this project? The question is, sorry, to complete also if you use Nginx, Apache, or any clusterization in front for Node.js.
No, for this project we don't.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's just a really short answer, but no, we don't.
No, it's a completely fair answer. It is the truth, simply. And again, in my opinion, this is again my opinion. This is a perfect example and a practical example how to use ADF in practice and the real life scenario. So I think it's really, really interesting. And thank you, Kasper, for sharing. So I cannot see any other question coming from the RC chat or the YouTube chat. Again, I would like to share the positive feedback with you, Kasper, and thank you again for sharing the content with us. If you think you have some interesting application on ADF or some reusable or some modules that you can think could be interesting for the ecosystem of developer, please let us know, because we would like to host you in a Tech Talk Live, sharing your experience with all the ecosystem of developers. So I think that we are at the end of the webinar. Thank you again, Kasper, for being with us. I hope to see you in the next hackathons, DevCon, and all the physical or virtual events that we will have, contributing with some new ADF project or Alfresco project in general. I would like to remember to everyone that the next event is not confirmed, but it should be Alfresco office hour the next 27th of April. It is a Friday. We would like to have the activity team talking about the new exciting stuff around activity 7 that is very, very close to a first release, not early access release that happens on monthly basis, not on the months, but roughly on monthly basis. There are lots of exciting enhancement there. And for sure, we will have another Tech Talk Live the next month that it usually happens the second Wednesday of each month. Stay tuned for the title because it's not confirmed yet, even if we have lots of things to show. Of course, if you think you have valuable content, let us know. We'll be very happy to be with you here, sharing the information with all the people. Again, thank you, Kasper. Thank you all. See you next time. Bye.